Hello, good evening everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. I'll just start by thanking Frank and the committee for inviting me over. It's a great pleasure and a great honor as well. So tonight I will share a bit about aquascaping, and I guess I just want to put out there that I'm still learning and I've never really ranked very high in the world, but I've learned some things along the way, so I just want to share with you and hopefully take something away. I understand that a lot of us here are fish keepers, but I think there's something that you could add in aquascaping as well. So there's some elements in there that may be beneficial to you. So let's see if this works. Yeah, a little bit about me. I work full-time as an architect. So this aquascaping is just a side hobby for me, and so I work a 9 to 5 as an architect. And yeah, I've also been featured on Gardening Australia, and so you can actually go back and find that on Google still. But it was a very spontaneous thing. They messaged me and said, "We love what you do. Can we come over and do an episode?" So that was a highlight for me, having Tammy and the crew over from ABC to do an episode on Gardening Australia. And this is probably where I find most joy in me. Do a lot of contest aquascaping. So these were photos from I think it's called the Pet Show, and it was in Melbourne, and probably a lot of you went to that one. There was one in Brisbane as well. Yeah, so won some comps there, I'd say by luck, because there was only 10 people, so your odds are high. And this is some of the other work I've done. So some iwagumi, some other contest tanks that I've done. And I think I just wanted to show you this because it's a big range. Like aquascaping is many styles, has many different ways you could create an aquascape. And this is the most recent one from last year. So Frank was like, well, why don't you talk about contest aquascaping, because that's something I'm really passionate about. And so I thought today maybe just talk a bit about how to create a good contest aquascape. And there's no right or wrong way of doing it, but these are just some tips that might help you to create something. And I think starting from this, and then you can start to break the rules to create things that are really cool. So we'll talk a bit about that. And the most famous contest in the world is the IAPLC. So it's the International Aquatic Plants Layout Contest. It is hosted by ADA, the Japanese brand, and it happens every year. And there's a judging criteria, and the main thing they're looking for is how natural your tank is, what's your maintenance skills, your technical skills, is it an original idea that you've come up with, how you present it, and the overall composition. So that's what they're looking for. It is subjective, I guess, to an extent, but there is a criteria that goes along that. And anyone can enter. So last year there was 1,500 entries from 77 countries. Doesn't cost you anything. Just take a photo, upload it, you're done. And as a gesture of thanks, everyone who does enter, they get a little sticker like this. And every year it's slightly different, has the year on it, and it's kind of like a collection of all the different tanks that you've entered. Yeah, so there are other contests out there in the world. So if you really get serious about it, you can find a lot of different contests that are available. And I guess the first thing is, when I started, I was like, well, this is a bit daunting. Like, how do I even start, right? And I just wanted to introduce you to two different ways of actually coming up with a concept, right? So there's some types of people that they want to plan everything very meticulously to the millimeter. They draw, they sketch, they have an idea in their head, and they want to execute it. So a good example is Stephen Chuang. He does kind of the work on the left. And then there's other people who, they look at the material, pick up a piece of driftwood, and then they go, well, how can I be inspired by this piece? And what are the really unique aspects of this piece of wood? And then they kind of build the whole layout around that. And so Adam Paskela from Poland, that's what he does. And I think what I want to show you in this is that there's no right or wrong way. Everyone has their own way because it's a creative endeavor. Everyone has their own way to create a layout. And both of these are very, very high-ranking tanks in their contests. And then the idea can come from anywhere, right? So the one on the left is Josh Sim. He was watching Tarzan with his kids. And then that's how he got the idea of creating a Congo-themed aquascape. Luca from Brazil was inspired by this artwork called The Great Wave. Everyone knows about that. And then he recreated that his own way with driftwood. Then on the left, we've got Matthew Maines. He was inspired by these, I can't remember the name, but it's these caves and basalt, yeah. And that's how he came up with that. And then we've got Stephen Chuang again, who was inspired by the Japanese maple and the color and bringing that through into the layout. So I just wanted to show you what these four, they come from all different places. Some people get inspired by nature, come from art. I didn't put up, I'll show you later, there's another photo, someone got inspired by architecture. So he went to a cathedral and the grandness of the cathedral was the inspiration. So yeah, I think inspiration can come from anywhere, and that could be your light bulb moment to try and make your aquascape. And for me, personally, last year's tank was inspired by, I don't know if you've been to New Zealand, but this is in New Zealand. It's called Blue Springs, from memory. And I was really inspired by how the grasses were kind of swaying in the current, and that idea of movement and how you can portray movement in a photo. And that's kind of how that all came about, is this idea of water and current and flow pushing through, so that it eroded the rocks, but also I want the viewer to feel the grasses flowing in the water. And mind you, there's no, like in the photo, you can't really show any technology, so no pipes, no pumps, none of that. But I've actually managed to hide a little outflow thing over here to blow the water that way, so you get that movement of the grass. But it's not visible in the final photo. So we'll talk more about that in a second. So quick overview, I will go through these 7 things on the things I would look at as a guide. It's not a rule, it's a guide on how I would create not just a contest aquascape, but also just a really layered, sophisticated aquascape layout. So we've got golden ratio, rule of thirds. We're going to talk about how to make depth or layers, contrast, shadows, how to add details, how to come up with cool ideas, and how to take the final photo. So let's start with the golden ratio, or the rule of thirds. So right there is the tank. You've got the 4 corners, and where the red circles are showing is basically where you would want to put your main focal things, the big elements. You want to draw the viewer's eye to these corners. And that is because when you're on the rule of thirds, you're not in symmetry. Like you're not making, if you put something in the middle, it's very symmetrical. That means your brain can kind of predict both sides evenly. Whereas if you go rule of thirds, there's a dominant side and there's a less dominant side. So I'll show you some examples. This is the hardscape of one of the tanks I've done, and you can see on the focal point, on the left line, I put the really big rocks. That's to draw your eye. And then on the opposite side, I put where the vanishing point is. So that's where your eye's going to finish. And that's on the other side of the rule of thirds. And so that's what that final photo looks like. A few more, trying to show you that it doesn't not just a crazy diorama style, but also even in Iwagumi, placing your main stone on that rule of third really changes how you see the composition of the tank. Same with this one. This is a nature style aquarium, and it still works as well. And also, the golden ratio as well. So that was the basic composition. Where would you put your hardscape, and where you want to put your emphasis on. And then to create depth and layers, and so something that I find really attractive is when you have a lot of layers, you invite the viewer to come and have a look at all the little details and everything in your fish tank, right? So creating layers creates interest, and it creates this perception of like many layers and makes it feel like it's very far away. You can create a lot of depth. So we'll talk about how to play on proportions, how to separate different sections in a layout, and how to create that illusion of something being very far away. So I want to introduce you to this layout. This was one of the winning layouts by a Japanese aquascaper called Takayuki Fukada. It's amazing, isn't it? It's 4 foot, this tank. And I think it's like 50 centimeters deep, or max 60 centimeters deep. And I'll step through what I think makes this really layered, right? So you've got big and small. Like if you look at those rocks there versus this rock here, it's massive. So by putting a really small rock at the back of your tank and a really big one in the front, you've now forced depth, you've forced perspective. Even though the tank itself is only like 60 centimeters, but that looks, hundreds of meters, right? So it's playing the scale between really small and really big. And then I'll break down the layers, right? So the first layer is, you kind of see the foreground. So you've got the sand and you've got the plants that make up the foreground. And the second layer are these big kind of rock structures. And the third layer is kind of that kind of cliff that sits behind. And you can tell because the lighting is different to, these big rocks, they have some shadow on them, and then this is like a very bright point. So your eye knows that it's actually not in the same plane as the one in front. So that's the third layer. Then the fourth layer is that, I guess, when you pass through the cave and you see the patch of grass at the back, that detail. And then the fifth layer is actually the very white spot. And you can see in a layout like this, he's managed to create 5 different layers. And so your eyes have to go through 5 different layers to get to the end point. So he's managed to take us on this journey through his layout without even saying anything, right? Your eyes slowly wander through the different 5 layers till you reach the very end. And that's very powerful because you can tell a story. So, yeah, that's what the final photo looks like. And that's how I think you can create the layers. So, to summarize, is you want to create the big things, put the big things at the front, and then put the very small things at the very back. And how you create that illusion of sections of different layers is you want the viewer to view something here, and then jump to the next layer, jump to the next layer, and then jump to the next layer. So by simply placing things, not in a straight line, but you stagger them, you slowly start to create layers. You can also create layers with light and shadow, or different plants, different textures. That's how you can also create different layers. So there's no right way of doing it, just experiment, but also I think there has to be a change between each layer to invite your eye to notice something different. Okay, and then we'll talk about contrast. So contrast brings interest to a layout as well. So what I mean by contrast is light versus dark, big versus small, close versus far, hard versus soft. So there's all these things because once you create contrast, there's more things for your brain to look at and more things for your brain to process. So I'll use last year's tank as an example. So the first one is light versus dark. So, we've got the end point at the back and at the top, and the really bright sand path. And then you've got the dark areas that are created by the shadow. And so your eye is then immediately first drawn to, along the path and to the end point. But then because there's contrast, your eye is now looking at all the other dark spots for the details. And, now you notice there's Bucephalandra in the shadows. And then this is like big versus small. So, your eyes drawn to, wow, look how big this cliff is. But then to contrast and to emphasize how big this cliff is, you have to put something small. So there's a point of reference. So now you have a small stone here to exaggerate and complement how big that cliff is. And same with over here. So we have big stones And to bring your eye to the next dimension, you've got to put something small there. And that's how you can create contrast with big and small. And then kind of near and far, that's something we explored with Fukada's layout as well. Having something really close to the glass and something really far away and really small. So that tiny rock there versus that rock here is like, you know, that one at the very back is like tiny. It's like this. But the moment you take that out, you've kind of lost that depth. And the last one is hard versus soft. So, you know, this, I've deliberately exposed this because previously it was Monte Carlo kind of creeping down all the way. But that doesn't give you enough contrast. So I wanted to expose the hard edges of this rugged landscape, but then complement it with really soft plants. So, you know, some parts I'd cover with Monte Carlo, some parts I had grass waving in the background or even in the foreground as well. And then have exposing, you know, some of the rugged edges as well. Because imagine if everything was covered with Monte Carlo, there's no interest because it all looks the same. So having contrast really helps to give you the different details. Okay, and then let's talk about shadow. So why shadow is important? Yes, part of it is giving contrast, but also it gives you that mysterious feeling. You want the viewers to feel a little bit uncomfortable because they don't know what's in the shadows. And you'll see, I'll show you with all the upcoming layouts, more than 50% of the layout is actually dark, it's in shadow. Okay? So it provides good contrast, it gives depth, because when I say we give shadow, it's not just completely black, you put details in the shadows as well. And then I'll show you a lot of times when we, I'll just try and do a live demo. A lot of times when we put hardscape, we can't just put it like flat, like this. So there's not that much detail. But if we tilt it, and the way the light hits it, all of a sudden you have shadow. So to make shadow is actually quite easy. You just have to tilt things so that it blocks the light from above, because our aquarium light is always coming from the top, right? So if you tilt it, then light can't get past. That's how you create shadow. And I'll show you in the live demo later as well. I'll show you some of the scapes. I just want you to like have a look at how amazing they are, but also just take note of how much shadow is actually existing in that layout. So this is a tank that I recently did for one of the stores in Sydney, and you know, you can see by tilting these woods, that's all shadow, all along there's shadow. Same with here, but just by tilting them 45 degrees or more, you get good shadow. This is another layout by Fukada, and you can see, you know, right up there behind that layer, there's like a lot of shadow there. Within here, there's shadow. Probably from a projector, you can't quite tell, but from the screen, if you look closely, there is detail in the shadow. And that's what we want, is we don't want fully pitch black, because now your eye has nothing to look at. There's no detail in there. But once you add, you know, little details in the shadows, that's where it adds another layer, another dimension. All right, another one by Josh Sim, and you can see, just look at that. It's like how much shadow is in there and how much shadow is in here. It gives you that edgy feeling, like, is this about to fall? Like, is it about to collapse? But no, it's not. And you can see there's like planting in the shadows, little pebbles and kind of gravel and stones in the shadow as well. All right, another one by Juan Pichades from Spain. You can see like in the front, it's just all shadow. And then he contrasts that with really bright background with plants. And it gives you that contrast to draw your eye from dark to light. Okay, and this is another one by Stephen Chuang. And yeah, again, just look at how much shadow there is underneath here, and under here, and here. Okay, and then we'll talk about details. So why is it important to add details? Because we want to add layers and create richness in that. We want the viewer to, you know, we've caught their eye with the big hardscape or with the dark shadows, but we want to keep them for a bit longer, just to invite them to look at the other things. So we have to add in details so that they get lost in our layout, and they want to look at every single, you know, corner and crevice. That's why we add details. So we can add details by adding pebbles to hardscape. We can mix plants in as well. I'll show you some photos. Oh, sorry. So this one, back to that the store Aquascape. So we've got the big wood, but if we don't have these small roots, we can't emphasize how big the wood really is until you put something small next to it, right? We've got these big stones, we need some small stones. And we've got small stones, we need some gravel, because that's even smaller stones, right? And, you know, having all of these little pebbles and stones here, it really adds a lot of detail and makes your layout feel even bigger. Right? Same hardscape before, you know, adding all of these little details along here and along here, they really help. And then mixing different plants. So, you know, even in here, I've got like 3 different plants in here that I'm mixing together. Same over here, I've got multicolor that's kind of weaving through the Bucephalandra next to some Hygrophila pinnatifida. So by mixing these, it gives you detail, because if you just have, you know, all hairgrass, your eye is going to look at the hairgrass and be like, yeah, I know, that's hairgrass, and then move on. But when you're mixing 3 different plants, now you're more intrigued, because you're trying to look at the different things that are all making up this scene. And the second last thing I want to talk about is, you remember in the judging criteria, there is 10 points being awarded to how creative you are and how unique your layout is. And I think this is what really draws me, is, you know, every year you can actually go online and look at the website. There's like thousands of pictures of how different people have done their aquascapes. And for someone to come up with a new idea or a new technique of doing something is fascinating, because there's a lot of, you know, oh, I'm inspired by this, but how can you take that inspiration and make it something else, right? So I find a lot of times when people come up with really stunning and creative layouts, they rank really high, because you stand out from the crowd, right? And there's a clear theme to what they're trying to do, and it sparks curiosity. It's like, oh, how did he actually do that? How did this person get that to work? How did they create that feeling? And how do they create that emotion? And, you know, sometimes you have to use techniques that are out of the box. And that is, for me, really fun, because that's very creative. You've got to think outside the box. So, yeah, this is me testing how to get that flowing feeling. So I was like putting pipes and stuff through just to test how the outflow is going to work, how to position it, and then how do I hide it, because look how chunky that is, right? And so there was a lot of hours being spent, but then on the right, that's the feeling that I was going for. I want you to feel the flow of the water even when the photo was taken, right? And I think to a degree, it was starting to get a little bit overgrown, and that feeling was slightly losing, but you can still kind of see how the blades of grass were directing your eye to the end point. So I had a pump or an outflow hidden here, and I had another outflow hidden behind this cliff to blow the water of these long blade grasses. But you don't see it in the final photo. So that was really difficult to kind of get right. But in the end, I think it was well worth it. Show you some other people's work. So back to Stephen Chuang. This reflection, he used a mirror and he laid it at the bottom of the tank, right? Because how is that even possible to get that reflection? So the only way he did it was he put a mirror down the bottom of the tank. Yeah, and it's like, well, I never thought of that. But that's pretty amazing what you can do, right? And then, you know, that reflection is reflecting that, you know, and that is reflecting that. But it's kind of amazing, because it looks like you're looking at it like a wetland or something, like a river or something that's reflecting. All right, this is Juan from Spain. What he did in this layout, so this is the one where he was inspired by the cathedral. And what he did was, we were on a dragonstone, right? He broke them up into like hundreds of pieces, and it's very difficult to stick them to make it kind of cantilever. So what he actually did was he took polystyrene foam and he carved the shape that he wanted, and then he stuck on piece by piece to the foam. Pretty amazing, right? And because the foam you can dig and carve, he was able to carve out big holes behind this for aqua soil to grow these beautiful red rhotalas. Because if you didn't have that, you can't fit soil in behind, and you can't get these beautiful colors because rotellas, they need a lot of soil, like rich nutrients. So having these big structures, without the foam, it's almost impossible to carve like that because they're just going to topple over, right? And then he used the mirror as well down here. There was a mirror put right at the back, and there was actually one more here, but it's not as visible. But he put a mirror behind here as well to reflect the path. And that mirror was actually on an angle. So Stephen's one was flat, but this one was on an angle to kind of make it look like it's going up. Yeah. Amazing, isn't it? Matthew Maines, so aquascaper from Philippines. He was inspired because he dives a lot, goes deep water diving, and so he wanted to bring you that feeling of you coming back up after your dive. And so the way he kind of sculpted all these pieces of rocks is really amazing. And he named this layout Ascend. And it kind of, once you read it, you're like, oh, I get it. Like, it's a clear theme. I'm ascending from my dive. Yeah, so, and another one is Escaper from Thailand wanted to feature the red lotus as the thing, as the star of the show. So the Escaper built the whole layout around the lotus, which is kind of amazing because, you know, of all the layouts I showed you before, they're all hardscape heavy, a lot of rocks, a lot of wood. And the Escaper was like, no, I'm going like full in, all in on the red lotus, and worked his whole concept around the red lotus. And then this last one is a combination of mirror and lighting. So this whole blue section here is a mirror, but then he's also put kind of like lights underneath the tank to shine through. I'm not exactly sure exactly how he did it, but it's kind of amazing. And it gives you that kind of out of this world feeling. Right, so how to take photos. You know, I think it's really easy to just take a phone and just snap a photo. But if you want really crisp photos, I'll give you some tips. Everything has to be dark in your room. Because, why? The front panel reflects, right? So if you wear a white shirt, you're going to see yourself in the glass. So everything has to be black. You have to wear a black shirt as well. And you can see me covering the top of my tank because we don't want the light to spill into the lens of the camera, right? And then, I'll show you later, we'll have to, you want to get ripples, but you don't have the equipment anymore. You took out all your lily pipes and all your pipes, how do you get the ripples? You get a hairdryer or a fan, and you blow on the surface of the water, and that's how you get it. And then you have to school the fish. Tap on the glass, get them to like swim one way, and then, you know, yeah, this takes hours. Yeah, so that layout there, in the photo, I had about 1,000 photos. And out of 1,000, you got to pick one. And like, probably 900 of them are all bad because the fish are doing their own thing. Yeah, so how to take the photo? We want to cover the aquarium light, like I mentioned. So you put a board or something between the top of the tank and the light. Cover the background, because right now, you know, you don't want to see what's in your kitchen when you're taking the photo. Put a background in. You can like shower screens, or you can go to Bunnings. There's vinyls that you can just stick, and then preferably have your camera on a tripod so that everything is still, and then you can take the photo. And the ripples, yes. So that there at the top, you know, you can see there's not a single piece of equipment in here. So what's making the ripples is a hairdryer or an aquarium fan. You can mount it on the rim of your fish tank, and that's how you get the ripples. And that fish schooling, I don't know, probably took like an hour or two, just kind of go here, go here, go here. Yeah, and so it's quite a job, but you can see how big of a difference it makes. It comes out a really crisp photo, and this was taken on my iPhone. Yeah, so you don't need some DSLR camera, this is on your iPhone. So, before we go into the live demo, I just want to conclude by saying, you know, the things I've shown you today, yes, they are absolute top of the world aquascapes. Those are all rank 1, top 10 in the whole world, right? But for me, why I'm doing this is, for me, the rank is not what I'm after. I'm not doing this every year so I can become number one in the world, right? I'm doing it because, for me, it's about growing as an aquascaper and learning new things, learning about plants, meeting different people, and just, there's this joy of, finishing something, because there's a deadline, you have to submit by the deadline, but there's this joy of like, okay, let me try really hard to see what I can get myself by this year. And then every year that you do it, you get better and better and better, and you learn new techniques as you go along. And it's a creative outlet for me. I'm so inspired by one of the scapes, or I'm so inspired by going on a walk, visiting this place. I want to try and bring that idea into my aquascape. And then there's connection with nature. So I'm sure it's more than just aquascaping. It's all of you. Why you're here today is this inherent connection with nature, and I believe we can learn a lot from nature. Just by simply trimming a stem plant, it goes back twice as bushy. And I feel we can learn a lot from that when we face challenges. It's like being trimmed, and we've come back stronger. So I think today's presentation is not about getting you to do some crazy aquascape. Today's presentation and later the demo is just to give you some of the ideas that, yes, you've got fish tanks at home. How can you just add a piece of wood or move a piece of wood in another position, and it will change the way you see your layout. And so I hope there's a lot in there, and I understand maybe some of it was very complicated, but it is what the best of the best have done, and I'm just sharing with you what I've kind of learned from them. And you might take away one or two things that you can apply in your own tanks. And just want to show you this. This was my first ever aquascape, right? And all you got to do is just have the willingness to try different things. This was a Kmart tank, and I wanted to know how to grow a carpet, and I couldn't even get my hands in to trim that big because I was too ambitious with the hardscape. But you learn, right? And you learn about, how do I maintain things? How do I trim the rotala so it's not like that stemmy? And so I wanted to show this photo because all the photos at the front, they're so glamorous, they're so amazing, but you've got to start somewhere, and this is when I started. And I think as long as you're willing to try something different, I'm sure along the way you'll pick up something really cool. So that will conclude the presentation for now. I believe we'll have a 5-minute break, and then we'll get into taking some of that stuff that I've shown you, and I'll put it right here in a live demo for you. Okay, thank you. All right, so the plan is in the next 30 minutes to 45 minutes or so, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll show you from start to finish how to make a hardscape for almost like a contest layout. And I'll kind of try and relate to all the tips that I showed you before into the live demo, basically. So first, I'm going to put in some aqua soil. This is just to help me stabilize the hardscape when I put it in. I'm not going to put a lot just yet because I just need a little bit so I can stabilize everything. So there we go. And that'll be good enough for now. A little brush. I'm just going to brush. I want everything to be at the back because later you'll see in a lot of contest tanks and a lot of my own tanks, I have sand in the foreground. And that's just because it's much nicer, it's more cosmetic than aqua soil. Alright, so just going to clean up the foreground a little bit. And then I'm going to grab the hardscape. And you remember there was two ways, right? The first way was you plan meticulously. And the second way is you get inspired by the hardscape. And so today I'm going to do the second way. When I picked up the wood, I'm looking at it and I'm looking at all the good features of this wood. How to maybe position it so that it looks really nice. And I can see there's a lot more texture on this face. Alright, so I'll just come over to the front so I can see what I'm doing as well. And we spoke about creating shadow as well, right? So this is my biggest piece of hardscape. I'm going to put it in the rule of thirds, as I mentioned before. So you can see that there. And I'm just kind of having a look to see what the best way of laying this out is. And you know, sometimes don't be afraid to like try different things, move things around, rotate them. I feel like this flows better. So right now this is in the rule of thirds, right? And you can see there is nice shadow over here. But in the shadow you can still see the details, which is what we want. Right? The main thing is in the rule of thirds, and for now I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to move on to my second piece. And by the way, I did some planning, right? So it's not all amazing from the get-go. So this piece, I want to kind of put it here. And you can kind of see I'm starting to lean over on the other third of the tank. And to complement and to balance out, because this side's very heavy right now, the left side. So I'm going to put another piece that's not as big on the right side. It's going to look something like this. Okay, I'm just going to test, have a look. Yeah, you know, that kind of looks alright. And in my head right now, what I'm thinking is, how can I bring your eye, because your eye is going to start here, how can I take you on a journey along here all the way to the back? That's what I'm thinking, because I've made the first big move, now it's the second move, but how do I continue and tell your eye to follow me along this journey? And that's the trick. Sometimes it's not that easy. And the other thing that's in the back of my head is, well, I've got to leave some space for the front because I've got to be able to clean the front glass. Because whoever's going to win this tank tonight, I don't want to make life hard by not being able to clean this tank, right? Okay. Yeah, so on camera, yeah, that actually looks better on camera than it does in real life. You can go along here and you can kind of see it's turning the corner. Sorry. And then you can kind of tell this guy here is a little bit shaky, so we have to glue him down. There's different ways you could do this. Cheapest way is get some tissue, scrunch it up, wedge it in, and put some super glue on it. Today I'm using this thing called, that's okay, Max Composil. It's like this fluffy, cottony material that kind of sucks in glue, and it's really good for trying to get instant hold. The color, it comes in different colors as well. Alright, so the way I'm going to do this, I'll take some of this, if it's tissue, it works as well. Scrunch it up, you have to scrunch it up, because if you don't scrunch it up, it's going to open up. And then air is going to get in and it's not going to stick. Alright, so what I'm doing is, you can't quite see just yet, but I'm finding the two connection points between the two wood, and I'm sticking it down. Alright, so I'm just going around, I'm looking for places where the wood connect. You probably can't quite see that on camera just yet, but I'll find another spot for you in a second. And it's simple, I just drizzle the super glue on top, and it's going to start smoking. And you just want to be careful when it's smoking, because it's a chemical reaction between the wood and the sponge. And with this chemical reaction, it's very hot, and it doesn't smell very nice because it's like fumes. So I just be careful. Let's see if we can help find that spot. Yeah, probably here. Can you see that? So just wedging it right there. And then, sorry, I have to come around. I can't even see what I'm doing. With the glue tip. Not sure if that's that visible on camera, but you get the gist. Alright, and now I've kind of mostly secured these two pieces. Okay. Alright, the next question is what to do next. And that's a question I'm asking myself as well, because where to from here, right? And part of it is thinking, how do I continue to make this layout? And so I think let's continue with the wood, because that's my gut feel. So we're going to take another piece of wood. We've kind of created this nice valley, and we want to add more in this zone, because it's very bare right now. So we're going to add another piece of wood there. And I'm just going to test different options here. Let's try and get the wood to be where I want it to be. Yeah, so probably something like this. On camera, it feels a lot taller, but in real life, when I'm standing here, it looks perfect. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to make another layer between these two. There's one more behind, right? And that will give another interest point for your eye to look at. That feels a bit better, but it's not very compliant right now. So let's try and put a piece of stone underneath to try and help stabilize. Yeah, okay, so that's not bad. But let me just test the boundaries a little bit more, see what happens. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. That's mine. Now this is very unstable, so I'm like quickly trying to get the glue in so that it's stable. It's more stable. So what I'm thinking about right now is how can I keep creating more layers so that your eye can keep going to the back. But at some point, it's going to have to stop, right? Because I only have so much space to work with. Yes, correct. Correct. So you'll see, I've run out of the big ones. I'm going to start moving to small ones when we get there. And progressively, you can kind of see, oh, on camera it's kind of hard to tell, but in real life, this piece is bigger. So this is number 1, number 2, number 3 in kind of the size. Okay, usually when I'm gluing, I'm trying to go for like 3 contact points of glue, like 3 different spots. So I've done 2. Let's see if I can do one more somewhere. Over here. If you get glue like this, I wouldn't worry. We'll get, you know, like a little blade or something, and it comes off really easily. Okay, so I've done that. Now, the next struggle that I have is if I want to keep building this, there's not enough height for me. So I actually need to add more substrate to get some more height. So that's what I'm going to do next, is I'm going to add more substrate. And so I'm going to start adding substrate over here. And this is actually really important because if I don't get the height that I need, I can't keep building the layers. But at the same time, I'm in a bit of a pickle because the more substrate I add, the more it wants to roll to the front, right? Because there's only so high the slope can go. So we actually need to also start building retaining walls. So how we do that is we get another piece of stone. Let's see, what's a good piece of stone? Probably this piece. This piece. And we kind of wedge it in here, like this. And that way, it'll stop some of the soil from coming to the front, right? Sometimes you need more than one piece because of the shape of the stone. So there you go, they fit really well together like that. And part of it is you still have to try and make it look very natural. So I'm finding pieces that kind of blend well with each other and trying to fit them in like a puzzle. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, okay, so that looks good. And while I'm doing this, because the wood is not soaked, it might float. So we have to stick it to rocks as well to weigh down the wood. Otherwise, when you take it home and you add water, the whole thing is just going to come up. And that's not what we want. Then I'll never be invited back. So I'm finding more points of contact between the wood and the stone. There's probably one more that I could do at the back. Okay. I'll teach you another trick. So you can't see from the camera, but the driftwood has some holes at the back. The more soil I pour, it's going to keep going through the hole. So we're going to get fine filter like mesh, and we're going to plug the gap with this. And you won't see it because it's going to be covered up in the end anyways. So fine filter mesh is really good to just help you plug the different holes, because the more soil I add, I need to make sure all the holes are plugged. Otherwise, the more soil I add, it's going to keep rolling down, and it's not going to help me. Right, so we've added more substrate. Let's see if we can add more hardscape now. So you can see now I'm moving into even smaller wood territory, right? I'm just seeing how can I create a bit more drama or depth, and I feel like maybe this piece, especially on camera, is looking too similar to the piece next door in size. So let me try another piece. Right? This is a much smaller piece. And then, yeah, I think that makes a much bigger impact. So now part of me is like, okay, that kind of works. Let's just save that option. Now let me try something else, because it's all about testing. So what if I turn it the other way? There you go. Now it feels even, I don't know, for some reason it feels even deeper, right? Now so I'm thinking, okay, well that works pretty well. That's all I did. I just turned it, and all of a sudden, and I want you to notice how the lines I'm deliberately making. You can see there's a diagonal line here and a diagonal line here, and then there's a diagonal line going this way, and there's another one going this way. So the lines are very strong in this layout. They're not kind of, they're complementing each other. So I think that already looks pretty good, but you know, I want to try something else and see if we can add one more layer in, one more piece of wood in, just to see what we can get out of it. And as you can see, this is as far as I went. Now I'm just winging it. That's all part of the process, right? Like, you have an idea and you take it so far, and then afterwards you got to try and work out what you want to do next with it. And it's actually, for me, this is the fun part, because now I'm experimenting, trying different things and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. And you kind of see, right, like on screen right now, it looks pretty small, but then when I show you the whole piece, it's actually massive, right? And so that's just trying to play with some perspective and some depth as well. Okay, so that kind of is interesting. I don't mind it. Probably something like that. Okay, so let's lock that in, because I am mindful of time. Usually, so all the ones that you see on the presentation I gave you, the hardscape itself takes like 3 weeks, because you put it in, you for a couple of hours, and then you stop, and then you wake up the next day and you look at it, and if you still like it, then you've done something right. If you don't like it, then you know you try something else, you try something different, right? So what I'm showing you today is a very condensed version, and part of this is about patience and perseverance, right? Because you're not going to get it right the first time. Yeah, you rarely do. There's a lot more to it. You have to give it a lot of tries to kind of get to where you want in the end. And something that I learned from Matthew Maines, the Philippine aquascaper, he said, while you're building the layout, you should already be thinking about the plants. Because if you build the layout fully and then worry about the plants later, it's not going to be in harmony. So sometimes I'm already thinking, well, where am I putting the soil? What plants am I going to put in there? How does this complement this whole layout? So I'm just looking at this and I'm not super happy with it. So I'm going to tweak it again. Yeah, okay. So I'll just run you through my thought process. Previously, when I had it like this, the top of the wood wasn't really going in the direction that I wanted to go. So then I flipped it over, and then I got to this point, and I was like, yeah, that looks good, but I don't like the fact that this and this are in the same line, if that makes sense. Like they're in the same line, so I've extended this further out. Like that. So now they're not exactly in the same line, if that makes sense. Like it's not, it jumps. And I think that gives a better effect, like that. So I like that more. I'm just going to go in and glue this part now. Sometimes if you can't get it in the right spot, like the tissue or whatever your gluing medium is, you can use a tweezer to get it in there. It helps a lot more. Okay, how does that look? Yeah, it looks alright. Yep, okay. What's next? Good question. I'm also thinking what's next. Now I'm just going to test a few more options, see what this might feel like. I feel like potentially I could add another piece here, but I need more height. So I need to add a retaining wall on this side as well, like I've done with the previous side. Okay, let's see, that's good. Oh, and another thing is, I've deliberately chosen the color of the hardscape so they complement each other. So imagine I went in with brown stones. Yeah, it'll look alright. But the thing is, your eye has one less contrast. That's why you choose light and dark, right? If I went with dragonstone, the texture of the dragonstone and the color would be very similar to the wood. Sometimes it's good, depends on what you want to go for, but if we're saying purely in terms of contrast, that's not going to help. So I've gone with a lighter color or greyish color stone with dark color wood, brown. So now there's more contrast in the layout as well. And then you'll see later we'll add sand at in the foreground, which lightens the whole scape as well, because right now everything's a bit dark, right? And then having the light will draw your eye. Okay, so Just going to plug a hole here because I can see there's a hole at the back here. And then, I don't know if you can see on camera, but there's a gap down here. If I put this, it's not very nice because you can see this. So instead, I'm going to put some small stones just in here. And that's because I'm about to put more soil at the back, and I don't want it to come to the front. So having these pieces of small stones, you're not even going to see them, but they're going to help quite a lot. All right, let's see how this goes. Right now, you probably can't see much from the front, but at the back, I'm building so much height so that I can also, make sure the plants have enough nutrients as well. Let's put some more here as well. Okay. All right, last piece of wood, and once it goes in, we can start adding some details and stones and things like that. Yeah, I think that looks okay. Maybe a bit bigger, a little bit taller. I don't like the angle of that. So flip it around. That looks alright. Yeah, okay, quite happy with that. Okay, I'll glue this down and then we can get to kind of the details. Okay, cool. So now, I think generally the layout is feeling quite nice. We've got good shadow and really strong kind of left side. We're having this complementing that left side. The light is hitting it really nicely on this piece of wood, but then on the opposite side, there's nice shadow over here. We've got small elements at the back. We're going to add even smaller elements at the back here in this to finish the path with small stones. And what I said about contrast, having big and small, so you can see how big this is and how small that is and how small that is. Right? So there's like 3 or 4 different sizes that are existing right now. Right, so here comes my favorite part, because when you add the sand in, everything comes to life. And a tip for you, to feel like there's more depth in your sand, what people do is they have a very thin layer of sand at the front. Because if you have a really thick layer, which I'll show you in a second, it doesn't feel very deep because now I'm seeing so much sand. Alright, so the sand, we are using cosmetic sand, so there's no nutrition, it's just purely cosmetic. And you can see the moment I add it in, it lightens everything and it brings that next layer of contrast. Now I'm just going to show you an example of what I mean by having a thick substrate at the front. So you look at that, right? Usually, you know, a lot of people, they put 3 centimeters of substrate right in the front, and then it just gets thicker and thicker from there. But I feel like once we do this, having a very, very thin layer at the front, it feels way more deep, because now you have more runway to go all the way there. Okay, so let's continue building our sand path. So the sand is quite dusty. You can see it's like fogging up the tank. Even if it's so dusty, I wouldn't wash it before putting it in. Just put it in. Your water will get like really cloudy for probably a few days, but that's okay. Sometimes I find that if you add water really slowly, it won't even cloud up your tank. So that's just something to think about. It looks really cool. Cool. I'm glad you like it. So you can see now, because I've added the sand path, your eyes are now like drawn. I'm telling you where your eye should look because of the light versus dark. Yeah, okay, that helps. So I'm telling you, start in the front and move your way to the back, right? That looks good. I think if I was to critique myself, I would try to end my path further away from the middle, because right now it's like slap bang in the middle. And I might try and end it somewhere here, in between these two, because I'm going back to the rule of thirds, okay? I don't know if I can make it happen, but we'll see. So let's see what happens if I change a bit more. Okay, and then because I'm trying to force my way to the left, it's getting really slopey again. It's the more I add, it's just going to keep sloping to one side. So I'll have to come back with another retaining wall. Let me find another good piece. And so this retaining wall is going to help me to just build up the sand just enough so that so you can see it just sneak by and you can just get a glimpse of the sand like that. Yeah, so you can kind of see it's just here. I'll see if I can add a bit more. Yeah, sweet. Okay. Yeah, okay, so now I've kind of created the illusion. I'm just cleaning up so you can see better. Oh, that didn't do anything. Okay, so I've now created the illusion that your eye is going along here, it's going there, and it's going behind this piece of wood, and then it's ending here. There we go. Okay. Now for the fun part, adding details. You can see here, this is so wide, there's no details at all. It looks so boring. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm going to add stones to complement the wood. I want you to think of the wood as the main actor, and then these stones are the supporting actors. So you can see I've got a line of wood that's flowing this way, and I've got another one that's flowing this way. Do you see that? The one on the ground? So when I put the stone in, I want to complement that. And I want to accentuate the flow of that as well. So I'm just testing different positions and probably different pieces to try and... Okay, so this piece is not working. It's too wide at the back. Let's find another piece. Probably this piece. Yeah, okay, so this doesn't look too bad. Yeah, okay, so because I've added this piece, now I've broken up that big kind of portion, and now all of a sudden the sand path looks a bit more narrow, right? And I can keep doing that with the front bit as well, because as it widens, I want to just fan out. Yeah, fan out the sand, the beach. Right? So now, all of a sudden, it's not this vast beach anymore. I've created a bit more detail in there. Okay, and then the next thing I want to do is this thing called visual stability. So right now, this huge piece of wood, right? There's not really anything supporting it. Like, it is standing up by itself. But I want to show you the effect of me just putting a few pieces of rock down here. Now all of a sudden it feels like it's meant to be there, right? And it's being supported by these tiny little stones. Like that. And these small stones contrast and accentuate how big the wood is, right? Yeah, so that's looking alright. And I'm going to do the same on this side, over here. And the beautiful thing is, you know, each stone has, or actually not just a stone, every piece of hardscape has their role to play. Like in this movie, the wood is the main star, and everything else needs to supplement that and support it, right? And the more I'm doing this, the more I'm thinking, yes, I can now add a bit more glue, because I'm so worried about whoever takes this home and then they just add water and it just floats. So I'm trying to just make sure that there's as much contact points as possible. Okay, so now that I've added some details to the foreground, I feel like, you know, maybe adding one or two more here might really help break that up. I want to now add detail to the background over here, because right now there's not really much happening there. And you can see, now I'm really picking like the smallest ones I can find, like as small as possible. And I just want to show you what that looks like the moment I put one of these in. So let's take this. Probably like that, you know. Now all of a sudden it looks very, very far away. Maybe even make it less pronounced. Yeah, like that. Whereas if I didn't have it, I'll take it away. Right? Now I'll put it back. Now there's something for your eye to compare this versus the front. Right? Like if you look at this rock versus this rock, versus like this rock, there's a big change, right? And so with these guys at the back, I'm kind of just like building little mountains in the distance. Yeah, yeah. And this part actually takes the longest because you're testing different like ways of doing this, testing different options. Yeah, but you can see I'm also using the stone to guide the path, right? So I'm putting the stone here because when your eye hits the stone, you're like, okay, now you have to turn. So now you're turning this way, and now you're going up the hill. Yeah, just see what else. Let's add a bit more sand towards the back here. Okay, perfect. Okay, and then just to finish off this side, you can't see this on your side, but what I'm trying to do is just add a little bit more soil to balance it out on this side because the levels aren't very even at the back here. So I just want to add a bit more soil. Yeah, you can't see it popping through here now at the back. And same on this other side as well. Alright, so that's looking pretty good, pretty happy with that for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. The last thing is to add more details. So, I've got gravel, and why gravel is important is because if you just go out and look anywhere in nature, right, like most of the time, we have, how do I say it, big rocks, but then the big rocks break down as well, right, and so we have small rocks. And right now, the sand is very fine, the stones are quite big, and once we add the gravel, it will add that one more layer of detail. Right, so I'll just show you what I like to do. It's very natural. I just go along the edges of this and I just sprinkle it in. And all of a sudden, we now have a lot more detail along the foreground, just like that. It kind of makes it look like, you know, these rocks have broken off and fallen down, and it just adds that layer. And you know, you can be pretty loose with it because in nature, that's just how it is as well. So add some to the path as well. And I think probably after when we're finished, feel free to come to the front and have a look at it. Because I think on screen, you know, the camera lens and stuff might feel a little bit different to how you actually would see it in real life. Yeah, I think that is pretty much close to finishing. Let's take this away. And so I've finished kind of like the hardscape. We're obviously not going to do plants today, but to show you what it means to draw your eye to something is, when I plant the plants, I want it to fill all of this because I want to draw your eye to that very, very end point, which is here, right? So I'm going to leave this part white and probably leave all of this white as well. But I want all of this to be filled because I want to focus your eye to where I want you to go, which is here, right? If I left this all blank, your eye's going to be wandering around, you're going to see this, and you look at this, and you're going to lose focus. That's why a lot of the contest layouts, they put, rotalas or big grassy plants because they want to cover this fully and only leave this as the end point. Yeah, so I think that's it. I'm sorry I have to do it really quickly, but this is pretty close to, there's layers, there's the front layer, the sand, then you've got the two big pieces, then you've got the middle kind of path that's taking you through to this rock here, so that's the third layer. The fourth layer is kind of these smaller stones here, and then the fifth layer would be where the light, the end point with the white background would be. And we've got good shadow, we've got tension, we've got lines that I've spoken about, we've got contrast, we've got big and small, near and far. Yeah, so I think I'll probably end it here because it's about 45 minutes. I think we'll take questions. I think questions will be from the presentation about the slides or anything to do with this. And I think Brett has specifically mentioned you can just raise your hand so we can get the mic to you, and then we'll take that away.
Who's got a question?
First of all, amazing. Second, I wanted to ask how to build contrast in a tank that's maybe got black water or a black background.
Okay.
What would you do to build contrast and light in that sort of dark?
I probably won't comment too much about black water because I haven't really done that. But if you have a black background, to contrast that is to have something that's really bright. So really bright plants to contrast that, or like bright sand to contrast that. Usually in aquascaping contests, white background is more preferred because it gives you that glow and it draws your eye to the end. So black is not as popular, but in saying that, the really, really good aquascapers, because they want to be different, they do the black background. I think last year, Luca Galarraga, the one who did the Great Wave, he actually did one with a black background. And he made it like space. So like he made the plants and the whole hardscape look like it was like part of space. So outer space, that's what I meant. So I think black background is slightly more tricky, but you can still get away with, just make sure you have the contrast in having light soil or light hardscape, green plants. Yeah. Thank you.
How long does the average for this to take? For sort of professionals?
6 months, I'd say. If you really want to go fast, you go 3 months. But it's like things can go really wrong if you don't manage. Like if you have very strong light, a lot of CO2, a lot of fertilizers, then you can get it done in 3 months. But it's not a very sustainable way of going about it. It's like fast fashion. So I enjoy the process. So I try to go 6 months because you want to enjoy and watch it grow, right? You want to see it develop over time. You don't want to just go bang 0 to 100. So yeah, I'd say around 6 months.
Sorry, Kevin, just 2 questions.
Yeah.
Do you run CO2 on your comp tanks? And the second question is, I thought there was a scoring component for long-term maintenance.
Yeah.
How do you prove that with the single photo that you submit?
Yeah.
And how do you take that into account when you build?
Okay, so CO2, personally on my tanks, yes, I do use CO2. I understand that it might be a bit daunting for some people, and I think CO2 is just something that can help boost your current plants, or it can open new doors to more advanced plants. But CO2 is not required in contest aquascaping, if that makes sense. It's just something that gives you more options, but it's not mandatory. So for my tanks, I use CO2. I want to bring out, the really red reds of rotalas. They don't need CO2. Or I just want to grow really lush plants. And sometimes, that time frame I spoke about, 6 months for some plants, they need CO2 to get it done in 6 months, right? Imagine a crypt. It's going to take you like, crypt parvas will take you a whole year to grow. So sometimes you need CO2, right? The second question was about how do they know that it's maintenance, like it's good maintenance? Well, the technical skill and like long-term maintenance is when the judges look at it, what they look at is, well, what's the condition of your plants, right? Like, if I put a stem plant and I wedged it on this piece of wood, it's not going to grow that well. So I know as a judge and as an avid aquascaper, that's not going to grow long term, right? So I guess it ranges. So things like that. The other thing is they'll look at how you've positioned the plant. So some plants, they need really strong light. You put it in the shadow, it's not going to grow that well. Some plants can't have too much light or might struggle with too much light, so you can't put it in there. So they understand the different requirements of different plants, and how you place them strategically is really important. Yeah, and I think to your point, Connor, sorry, to your point, Connor, at the end of the day, it's a photo, so you can still trick the judges. Say for example, this piece of wood here, someone can tie some rotalas and just wedge it at the back, have it growing really well in another tank, in soil and everything, and just before I take the photo, I just wedge it in there. Some people get away with that. But at the end of the day, it might not look natural because I think you can tell by if a plant's been there for months or if it has been there for 2 days. Sometimes it's quite obvious. And with the judges, they'll look at that, and that's how they can kind of deduct points. Yeah.
How would you go about if you wanted to, so like if you had a display tank and you wanted to have multiple viewing angles, so say from a view on the front and a view on the side, how would you go about planning the composition around that? Because obviously you want to have multiple angles. Would you link the two, or would you have it as two separate, essentially, scapes, or would you have it link together and form two parts of one whole story?
I think both can work. I think for scapes that are viewed more than one angle, you want to prioritize what that looks like. So as an example, let's say it's being viewed from here and here. I would not bank my substrate this high. I would do what I've done in the front on this side as well. I'd treat it as two front panels, and I'd bank everything on, let's say, this side, right, and this side. Whether you want to create two completely different compositions or create one connected one, I think that's totally up to the hardscape, up to the scaper, what you want to portray, what feeling you want to portray. But what's beautiful about seeing things from two different angles is you see the same piece of hardscape in a different way, because hardscape is different sides. What you see on screen is one side, but if I turn the tank over, you'd see a different side, right? So having tanks that are viewed from multiple angles, it gives you the advantage of showing another side of that hardscape. But it also gives you challenges because you have less things to hide. Like there's less, you can hide less, if that makes sense. Yeah. Don't know if that answers your question. Yeah.
Hey mate, my question's about, I guess, tank size and quality of glass and things like that. Does it really matter to have a good, expensive tank, or can you get away with like a cheaper type of glass? And what's your go-to in terms of sizing?
Size, okay.
Yeah, for contests and stuff, because obviously you've done a great aquascape here tonight in a short amount of time. But if you had the time in the perfect setting, what size would you choose?
Sure. Okay. So I'll talk about glass first. It is absolutely not required to have fancy glass. Fancy glass is just for your own viewing pleasure at home. One of the top aquascapers, Josh Sim, he shows videos of his tanks. It's float glass. It's got bracing like everywhere, silicone everywhere. I mean, to an extent, like you can have float glass just as long as there's no like silicone like disturbing the front view. It is not required, because at the end of the day, when you take the final photo, you crop out the glass edges anyways, right? Unless your glass is heavily tinted black or something, then it might affect the overall viewing experience. But when you go to a shop, float glass versus low iron glass, it does not make a difference for contest. Yeah. Size-wise, my ideal size is 4 foot, so 120 centimeters, and that has to do with the ratio. So with a 4 foot, it's a 16 by 9 kind of. It's like a wide ratio. It's like almost when you go to watch a movie. It's like it feels very comfortable, right? It's like because that's just how our eyes read it. Whereas the 3 foot, it's actually, you know, like short and tall. It's a bit like the proportions are different. So I think you want to go for like more long than high, if that makes sense. So like the worst case, like the hardest to escape is a cube because the proportions are so difficult to work with. So I'd go with a 4 foot, and then depth is really important, right? Because like I mentioned, this is prime real estate. The more depth you have, the more layers you can create. So for me, 60 centimeters is like the perfect depth, right? So 4 foot for a 120 by 60, 4 foot by 2 foot. Now you're probably thinking, why don't we do 5 foot, 6 foot, 7 foot? Like the wider the better, right? Well, I don't think so, because one costs, like imagine every single centimeter of that is like the soil, the amount of money you have to pay for hardscape soil and everything is a lot. But also there'll be a point where it's so wide your eye there's no way to focus anymore because it's just so long and wide. So you want to have just enough to capture and feel comfortable and guide your viewer through your journey, right? So usually 4 foot, max 5 foot is probably a good range. But in saying that, you know, this works perfectly well as well. So work with what you have. But if I had all the money and luxury in the world, I'd buy 4 foot by 2 foot. Yeah. 2 foot deep. Yeah. Tall, 45 centimeters, 50 centimeters, max 60. Because any taller, you're just going up and your proportions are running out of you.
So you've got the hardscape there, which looks fantastic. Would you be able to walk through the types of plants and where you might put them?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so for the front, we want details, right? But we don't want plants that grow really tall because it's going to block our vision to the back. So the front, we're going to plant things like dwarf hairgrass. We're going to mix it with some Masterclass or Monte Carlo. So all these are like really small and low-growing plants, you know. And I want to mix them because I don't want Monte Carlo here, hairgrass here, and something else. I want to mix them so that you get the textures, right? And it feels more natural. Remember, there's points on it feeling natural. So that's what I want to do there. And then as we move towards like the mid-ground areas, in this particular scape, there's a lot of, I guess, areas where there's no soil or substrate. So I'd go with a lot of epiphyte plants. So Anubias, mini Java fern, and we want to try and keep the textures as small as possible. Imagine I put a giant Borbitis here. That grand piece of wood is no longer feeling grand because the leaf of the Borbitis is the same size as this. So I want to keep things really small to keep that scale. So I'm going like mini Anubias or mini Java fern. I'm going with moss as well because moss gives that aged look to an aquascape. And I might even put some Monte Carlo on these edges here, and then they can drape down. But you need CO2 for that. Okay. And then towards the back, I'm planting things that can go tall because I want to cover these. So the Rotalas are good, Rotala green, Rotala red. Even tall grasses, Vallisneria, or I don't know, tall hair grasses, Cypress hellfairy, like that kind of stuff to kind of block this. And then in the back here, I actually put a bit more dwarf hairgrass because I want to contrast whatever's happening here with my endpoint, and having some dwarf hairgrass because the leaf blades are so fine, it gives a really nice effect. Yeah, so that's probably how I would plant it. Yeah.
Anyone else? Thank you, Kevin. One at the back. Oh, two. Oh, geez, was nearly no more bets at the casino.
So thanks for tonight. It was really cool.
Thank you.
What kind of fish would you put in that kind of aquascape?
Yeah. Any from the photos that Adam put up is good. Any nanofish. I'd probably go with the schooling, small tetras. don't know the exact name, Sundyed Danio, I think. It's the blue kind of tetra. Those are amazing. Or, lamp eyes are pretty nice as well. Anything that's small in schools well together, cardinals, neon tetras, green neons, those are all really good options. Yeah. Okay.
The same question was about.
Oh, okay, sweet.
If we could put our hands together again for.
Thank you.